Good morning, Auburn family. Kevin Steele is joining the Alabama Crimson Tide yet again. Why are we talking about this on an Auburn show? Well, there's some ties with the Auburn story that we're going to discuss and what that means for Hugh Freeze coming up this season and beyond. But it's going to be an interesting thing to talk about on this morning of Good Morning Auburn right now. Good morning, Auburn family. Good morning, E2C Network family. Thank you so much for joining us, for being here, for hanging out with us, for watching this live, for watching this on the replay. However you got here, we appreciate you being here, hanging out with us, spending some time talking about something in the Auburn family spectrum. As always, as we come into these streams, we want to do this to start off our show. As you drop in, make sure you use this as your check-in period. Post where you're watching from, your city, your state, you're international. If you are international, post that right now in the chat. And always, please do make sure you smash the like button if you enjoy this type of content. It does help us continue to grow our little family within the Auburn family. Our topic at hand today, Kevin Steele will return to face the Auburn Tigers, this time from the Alabama Crimson Tide sideline. It's not really super Auburn related in the fact that we obviously won't see him for 12 games into the season, but it is an interesting story ties because of the history, because of the good, the bad behind all of that. So I thought it would be fun this morning to spend a little bit of time, park it on the subject of Kevin Steele returning to Alabama and eventually facing the Auburn Tigers yet again, his former team, a team that he was defensive coordinator for forever, a team that he was an associate head coach for forever, that he was interim head coach for, that many thought he would be the head coach for. He is now returning back to the SEC after a stint away and will be there to face the Tigers at the end of the season. So I'd love to hear some of your comments and questions about all this, because I know that some of you have some opinions about that particular thing over here. Neil's here. Good to see you, Neil. I ventured over to RBR, which I guess is one of the roll. Is that what that is? To check out the enemy comments on the Steele hire. Lots of mixed opinions. Some Bama fans like the hire and others don't. Some are angry that Saban hired a former Barner, which is really interesting, right? Because he was with them multiple times before he was with us, which, probably some of the same things happened when we hired him, that we hired a former Bammer. Pretty much these days, it's hard to find anybody that doesn't have some ties to Alabama, which, you just kind of have to deal with. But I understand the mixed emotions just because of certain scenarios there. But what we want to really hone in on is like how we feel about this, how we feel about Kevin Steele, and how, we're going to, what we think this is going to play out, right? Because I think it's going to be really interesting when we get to December and the Iron Bowl, and that matchup actually happens yet again. So just let me give you a brief reminder of where Kevin Steele has been. I mean, he is probably one of the more, him and Wesley McGriff, our defensive back coach, one of our defensive back coach, are probably one of the most like tenured and storied and experienced at all levels across, college football and Southeast, just having several stops. I mean, he has been at Tennessee multiple times. He has been, was it Tennessee? Yeah, Tennessee multiple times. This is Kevin Steele we're talking about. New Mexico State, Oklahoma State, Nebraska. He's been to the Panthers. He was the Baylor head coach for a while, which didn't go well. He was Alabama DC in 2007 to 2008, before he went to Clemson to be there. Then he came back to Alabama to be director of player personnel and then linebacker coach from 2013 to 14. Obviously, then over to LSU to be the DC there. And then his long stint at Auburn under Gus Malzahn, seeing the end of that tenure there, to Tennessee, Miami, and now back to Alabama. So what you have here is a guy with lots of experience and lots of ties. And it's interesting to see how this time around might go for him and the Alabama Crimson Tide, and how he might fare against his former team, a team that he likely had an opportunity, probably one of the better opportunities, to be the head coach of, depending on what theory you subscribe to. So what do I mean when I talk about that? Most of you know this if you're an Auburn fan. For those of you that are not Auburn fans or just maybe not more tuned into that, the rumor was, which I've still yet, and I'm going to say something unpopular here, but everybody just hold on. I've yet to see solid proof that there was a coup done by Kevin Steele to take out Gus Malzahn so he could get the head job. That was the rumor. That was the take. And so there was this campaign to stop the steal at Auburn, even though most of those people wanted Gus Malzahn gone. And then that voicing of the opinions in some people's minds made them believe that they had stopped the Kevin Steele hire, which may or may not be true. I have no proof that it didn't happen, but I've been presented with no solid proof that it did happen. What I know is that Gus Malzahn was fired. Kevin Steele was probably, well, I should say, this is my estimation, that he was probably interviewed. Probably the backlash from that was generated from that made that a very unpopular decision, and thus he moved on. He was not retained by then head coach Brian Harsin, and so on and so forth, which frankly probably could have been something that saved Brian Harsin. See how all that goes. But yeah, Steele's defenses AU were good, especially on the line. So, and this is what we want to talk about, right? So this is the complicated history of Auburn and Kevin Steele. Because if you take out that last little stint with him, those last few months, the Stop the Steal campaign, all that stuff, he was very much beloved. I mean, he became at one point, I believe, the most well-paid assistant at the time. He was up for the Broyles Award several times, I believe, if I'm not mistaken. And I thought he won it at least once, but I can't remember exactly. But basically, one of the most valued members of the Auburn football coaching staff, and some people would argue, I know that he's probably the reason that Gus Malzahn was able to stay as long as he did because of how good his defenses were. We all remember how great that 2019 defense was, how unstoppable, how they were the only people that could slow down Joe Burrow and the eventual national champion LSU Tigers. So his history with us from that extent is great. We know how great of a defensive coordinator he has a history of being, especially with us. So does that worry you? Maybe it should. To me, it's a little bit troublesome, given the track record, given his success level, given his familiarity with us. Now things have changed. We've got a second head coach in as many times since he's been here. Obviously, there's that. He's probably got familiarity with Hugh Freeze, being in the SEC as a defensive coach at several different places. So this could be a bad thing. It could be a bad thing that Kevin Steele and Auburn will face each other at the end of December in the Iron Bowl for the Auburn Tigers. Now, let's look at the matchup a little bit, because we know that this season is going to be probably full of a lot of uncertainty, is going to be full of a lot of ups and downs, is probably the safe way to say it. But we all know, no matter what happens throughout this season, that there's going to be a lot of excitement, a lot of good things too. And there's probably going to be a lot of hype built up to an Iron Bowl once again in Jordan-Hare Stadium with Kevin Steele returning. You don't think that place is going to be pumping, jumping, whatever? That's going to be awesome. If I'm not mistaken as well, just to add another element on top of what could be building to a great Iron Bowl because of the Kevin Steele situation. If I'm correct in this, the CBS deal is now done, which means that we're not guaranteed to be a 2:30 kickoff on the CBS with Gary and Brad Nessler, I guess is who it was on there, that we will probably be an ESPN pickup, and maybe even for a night game, which would make this even more raucous. So add those elements in. Kevin Steele returns to Auburn to face his former team, in some ways, as a head coach, because he was an interim. Some of these players will still be here, not many of them. Some of them will still be here, and make that very, very interesting. Anybody out there scared to face Kevin Steele? Just be honest. Look, we all want to throw it out there and be like, no, I ain't worried about it. But is anybody truly concerned that Kevin Steele is coming back to Auburn? I think there's cause for a little bit of concern, but I also think if you look at the mixed reaction from the Alabama fans, you understand why there's a little bit of a non-trepidation as well. Neil says no whatsoever, even though he was talking up his and Scott says no, talking up how good the defenses were. Rumor has it that Saban wanted Pruitt, but the Tennessee investigation, yeah, obviously there's going to be the rumors out there about who he actually wanted. Now, listen, you could do a lot worse than Kevin Steele in terms of if he's your second choice. Here's my assumption of the situation. I think personally, you've been there and done that, and you don't make that your first choice, but it's a dang good second choice. So I understand not being concerned about this one because, of a lot of motivation factors around that. But at the same time, he's got a track record for putting together good defenses. And when you walk into it, and just think about this, when you have a track record as a good defensive coach, defensive coordinator, and you walk into the situation that Alabama provides you with that talent stack, not just a class of talented players, but a talent stack, that could be a good thing for them. Neil says he's optimistic about the season, but don't expect a 2013 miracle. Bama will also be dealing with a new O-line, offensive coordinator, defensive coordinator. I've never seen somebody write it like that, Neil. I've only seen OC and DC, but it threw me off for a second. Lots of changes at both schools. So, and think about that. So when we talk about the Steele facing of Auburn, that's going to be a great thing there too. But if we kind of play the scenario out of the season about what's going on with both teams, you could see a world where both teams maybe aren't elite, but still competitive, probably still more so Alabama, but have a reasonable opportunity to be a really great game when we get to that time there. And you add on top of that, this layer could be pretty interesting. Bama had Todd Grantham as one of their candidates. That would have been funny. That's another name that's been around. And I don't know Todd Grantham up and down, but frankly, I've got to give props to, if that's your two choices, I think they got the better choice than Kevin Steele. The ironic thing about this is, as many Auburn fans did not like Kevin Steele by the end of this thing, even me as a Gus Malzahn apologist, wasn't super mad, even with the rumors that he did a coup to get rid of him. So I have no ill will. Excuse me. Sorry about that. Knocked the camera around a little bit. I have no ill will towards Kevin Steele in his time at Auburn. I'm actually very thankful for his time at Auburn and what he was able to pull off while he's here. But I now have ill will toward him being back at Alabama for a third time. That's the thing that I can't wrap my mind around the most. It makes sense if you're a position coach to go back to places multiple times, Wesley McGriff, or I guess at least it makes more sense. But that you're back there again as a defensive coordinator. Granted, Neal was only a defensive coordinator one other time at Alabama. Apparently, they have a good history together and they like it. Scott says, good DC, but watch your back. So, yeah, Scott, I always talk about this, that people say that happened, but I've yet to see proof of it. So I really don't believe that happened unless I can see proof of it. To me, it's just message board rumors and stuff like that. And I know that's not the popular thing to say, but I think sometimes we all say we heard this, we saw this, or my friend said this thing. So, and then we don't, follow through with actually seeing if that is true or not. Not saying you didn't. Maybe you got proof, but I've just never seen it. Either way, this is the history of it. Kevin Steele, former Auburn defensive coordinator, longtime former interim head coach and head coaching candidate, has returned for a third stint to the Alabama Crimson Tide, and they will face each other at the end of December. It will be an interesting matchup already. Add this layer on top of it, and it'll get even more interesting. And so I'm looking forward to this one even more. Hopefully, this time, this third stint at the Crimson Tide will not be a good one for Kevin Steele, and we get a little bit of we'll call it revenge for going back to the rivals, so to speak, even though there's been a little bit of separation since their time. All right, final comments and questions, drop those in now. I want to give you a few reminders as we end our stream today. Don't miss our live stream tonight. Auburn at Texas A&M post-game live stream. Going to be doing that yet again, back in the saddle after a little bit of vacation time that I had. Excited for that. Hope to see you, your smiling virtual faces, on that stream tonight. And as usual, our Booster Club members will have the call-in link if they would like to utilize it. Also, check out some of these links in the description. You need to be a subscriber so you can be part of our giveaway for a signed Auburn football prize package. Also, there's the channel membership program, the Booster Club program, things that you can do to help keep the lights on here at E2C Network, and several others in the description. But of course, you don't have to do that. We appreciate those of you that can and are willing to. We mainly just ask that you are here, that you spend some time with us, leaving comments, asking questions, smashing that like button, and then spreading the word about our little family within the Auburn family, the E2C Network family. Thank you guys so much for hanging out with me this morning or watching this on the replay, however you got here. And hopefully we will be talking about this in the several months at the end of the year. A very interesting story with Kevin Steele returning to Auburn. To Auburn to face Auburn in the Iron Bowl. Until I talk to you guys again, see you later, and War Eagle.